to Chinese live, so that anyone who is basically wants to listen in, then they have that opportunity to even listen in Chinese if they want to. Yeah.
Sure. Harris
Yeah.
Harris had explained to me earlier.
Okay. Yeah. I know that. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. We just wait for a few minutes for everyone to join because we have a few
Sure.
people joining, and then also we have people joining in the live stream. So we'll just give 1 or 2 more minutes for them to join in.
Of course. Of course.
Okay, we have a few people who joined us, about 40 to 50 people, including the live stream and here. But I think there'll be more people joining in typically in the first 5 minutes. So we can start with at least with the people who has joined here. And just let me give you a brief introduction. So today, obviously, we are sharing cultural nuances and designing for the Southeast Asian market, and is being presented by Victor, who's head of product design from Bain and Company. And a few things to note for all of you. So a kind request that when you join the sharing, please mute your microphone and also keep your camera function turned off so that you have a smooth session. If you want to unmute, yes, you can ask questions at the end, and that's when you can unmute and ask your questions. Or if you want to leave your questions in the chat function, you can do that also. So you can leave your questions in the chat, in Zoom, or in the chat if you're watching us through live stream, then on the chat in live stream as well. So we will answer those. We will check what is the questions coming in from live stream, and we will answer those. Victor will answer those at the end. Please do not take screenshots, and please do not record this session. And we will be recording this session, and we will be sharing it in our YouTube channel and also on LinkedIn later on. So you will be able to view that, but please do not do it on your own. And when you're asking questions, just please keep in mind, do not ask for any sensitive or confidential information to Victor. Yeah, and if you are inclined to listen to this, if you're more comfortable listening to this session in Chinese, then please join the Zoom session. And in the Zoom, you will find that there is an interpretation function. So um, you can join, you can get the interpretation function through the globe icon or through the more function, and you'll see interpretation and you can join Chinese. But just note that please mute your original audio, otherwise you will be able to listen to both English and Chinese at the same time. um, just give me 1 second, because there's a lot of noise, I think, from the background, so let me just uh, okay, so sorry about that, because people are taking calls from their desk, so there's a few thing. Yeah, there's some background noise. So just to introduce Victor. Um, so Victor, I actually we interacted on LinkedIn, and Victor is the head of product design at Bain and Company. So he provides top-tier consulting to help clients and organizations transform their ideas into actualized winning strategic design solutions. He's a design leader. He's been a storyteller, facilitator, and collaborator, and he's passionate about building and leading design teams. So that's what he is going to bring in about his user stories to life and how he incorporates this knowledge of culture in the Southeast Asia market into his designs in Southeast Asia. So that's what he will be talking about today. So over to you, Victor. Thanks a lot for supporting us, and thanks everyone for joining us for today's session. Victor, over to you, and then you can take over. Yeah, okay, good. We can see your screen.
Yep. Hang on, yeah. Let me put up the setup. Okay, can you guys see my screen now? Yes?
Yes.
All right, thanks so much, Sanchita. Maybe just a quick intro, and Sanchita did a fantastic job introducing me. Currently head of design and also expert associate partner in Bain & Company. But today's session is not about Bain, not about Victor, not about myself. It's learning about designing digital experiences for the Southeast Asia market. So in today's context, we'll explore the design insights and put on cultural lenses when we dive in further into the insights. So without further ado, let's get started. Right, a little bit of background on myself. Currently head of design as what Sanchita has introduced me as. But below here is my design journey. Started myself from design school, doing industrial design, product design, launched a few successful products out in the market, handheld massages, slimming belt, as well as massage chairs, and then moved into the space before UX is even called UX. So that kind of sheepishly give you an idea of how many years I've already been in the industry. So started in the area of like HCI, human computer interaction, or back then it's also known as IX, interaction design with HP, and progressively moved on into teaching as well, a little bit of teaching time in Temasek Poly. The little logo in the middle, it's a startup company. Sometimes I joke with friends that I'm actually selling ads because this firm does ad prints, imprints. And moving from there, I've joined a company in PayPal. That is the peak when fintech and the financial world are like sort of shaking itself up. I was in PayPal. And my first taste of consulting is actually with IBM iX, the consulting wing of IBM. And there onwards, I've moved on and in my current role in Bain & Company. So before we dive into the insights, in the spirit of consulting, we love facts, figures, and numbers. So if you take a quick look at Southeast Asia today, right? So it's a very savvy, youthful population. Southeast Asia has a very young population where more Asian millennials are coming to age and joining the economic workforce. But this number has already started to get a little bit older. So it's around the age of like early 30s. Next up, you see that more than half the Asian population is connected to the internet. Almost everyone Asian, if you were to take a train, if you step out, you can see everyone has their phone in their hand. Sometimes there's a joke of like the baby is born with the phone that's connected to the cord. So big businesses here have opportunity, especially in the e-commerce space, targeting such a big population market. And of course, the entire internet economy.
当然，在整个的互联网经济时代。
Sorry for that.
Harris, is that supposed to happen?
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
strange. Yeah.
So
the Chinese and the
yeah.
English came in the same room.
Yeah.
Okay,
let me resume then.
Yeah.
So the internet economy is going to contribute about 300 billion by the end of 2025, but this figure might have already exceeded with the boom of COVID, where everything has gone digital, has gone online. So now let's quickly dive in, and here are 8 considerations based on observations, hypotheses, and things that are yet to be proven. So a little bit of a disclaimer down there, things that I've observed through interacting with clients, working with companies and people. Okay, so let's dive number 1. So 1 talks about plan for diverse language. What does that mean? Essentially, it means that nobody likes a language or cultural barrier on their home turf. So we want to speak our own original language. So what that means here is, so users typically want to expect to feel local. They want to feel welcome, as well they want to feel wanted. But realistically, it is not the case, because if you look at the apps, some of these apps will be looking very familiar to you, is that they're built on an international platform. So it feels a little bit, as you're using it as a local using it, it feels a little bit like a bowl of salad, or in true spirit of Southeast Asia, it's a rojak. So take a look at what some users have said. So especially foreign expats or foreign talents that came back to their own country, it feels like as an upper class or overseas educated people, they might be able to use this. But it's probably still confusing why there's a mix of language. So if you take a look at some of the languages, take for example, Lucky Egg, not able to translate that into Viet. So you have English words popping up across, right? And towards the right-hand side of verbatim there, experts would probably prefer to use it fully in English. So sometimes when we are designing for an international field, but trying to take in that localization language, it becomes neither here or neither there. So that's a big issue when it comes to here. But if we look at design considerations for point 1 of planning for diverse language, is that 1, plan for the primary market. So take for example, if your primary market is Indonesia, then focus all your design effort into Bahasa Indonesia before you diversify into other language. Example here is Tokopedia did it awesomely. So if you are in Indonesia, if you're doing e-commerce shopping, the platform that people will go to because it feels right at home, the language is there, you feel local about it. Tokopedia is a good example. Or you might take a stab at a universal design, but it has a bit of a flaw when you change the language, because each copy strings, we call the language as strings, has a character limit or a letter limit. Anything goes above that limit, you start to see ... that appear. And sometimes this ... makes the entire sentence doesn't make sense. So the workaround around this is to pack the entire language into just English as a start. And of course, there's also another option of like, this will make your entire install package looks quite big. It's adapting based on location IP. So your app will have tolerance, paddings, considerations, all already built in based on the language that it might support, right? So let's dive into point number 2. So target mobile experiences in mobile first markets. But in this context, we feel, or rather I feel, it's not a mobile first, it's a mobile only market. Why I say so? Again, back to the facts and figures. Let's take a quick dive into some of the facts and figures. And this is something that I clicked out from Al Jazeera, as well as a report that was done together with Google Temasek and Bain & Company. So there's a quote that goes around and says that Asia Pacific or Southeast Asia is a very connected society. 4% growth of sales volume on smartphones has been increasing. If you look at global, it's a bit of a decline. But if you look at the new launch of the iPhone, you suddenly see like, oh, how come there's a spike? 1.2 million more phones that are purchased in 2019. And there's right now around like what, close to 100 million phones out there. So point 3 will be taking example of 64% of Indonesians shop purely with a mobile phone. And how can this, or why this is happening? Highly likely because of there's an increase of usage and introduction of e-wallet across the region. So there's also a prediction of 84% of adoption rate comes 2025 on e-wallets. So a huge opportunity on e-commerce space. Let's take a look at a bit of a case study example. Here is most of you in Singapore would know is Raffles Hospital, and they are sort of taking that first step. This is pre-COVID already started happening. Moving away from a mere, you go into the website, you just check for info, you do booking or scheduling, around the area of like a bit more of the personalized experience. And reason being is that they are at the point when COVID just started when they did this. And they had that entire first movers advantage due to urgency caused by COVID. People can't move anywhere. People still sought after for healthcare. And that also gives rise to your telemedicine, your doctor anywhere, right? And also there's this shift of like personalized care rather than having being like in a room that has a lot of people. Can I be just me taking care about myself? And the solution around it, it's a mobile first solution by Raffles, and it's a collaboration done together with Dr. Wo. On this page, it's about other ways to think about mobile only perspective. Some areas to think about it, like your design considerations, look at, for example, onboarding. Don't use email access, don't use like scanning of stuff. Go with what the phone has, which is essentially your phone number, your OTP, or your social account access. So that gives you a perspective of like mobile only, and it's truly on mobile from the moment you're onboarded to the point of usage. Let's look at point 3. Point 3 talk about picking the right OS and device type and condition. What this essentially means, if I can do a vote, I would have asked, would you pick an iOS or you pick Android? So this chart here shows the OS landscape. If you notice the purple bars, ASEAN is practically Android first. Why is that being said? So if you were to look at this chart, you would want to plan for Android first and then only go into your iOS. But if you're focusing on just single OS, you would want to focus on Android. Android users tend to opt for like low end or their hand-me-down devices. So do consider lower end performances, not too fancy UI interaction, things that are jumping around, lower it down because sometimes the OS might not be the latest version because they are hand-me-down phones. So the points that I just shared about, the 3 little points. Let's look at point 4, which is bang for the buck. So in what this essentially means is that many ASEAN countries are still developing. Take Singapore out aside. Beside Singapore, all the countries around are developing countries. So Asians don't really have, Asians don't really have like super high buying power. Thus, we need to focus on price. And in other words, short of me saying sometimes Asians are cheapskate, but we are price and discount hunters. So it's all about spending the now that you earn and not what you're going to earn tomorrow. So think about sensitivity in price and how that kind of translates into design consideration. 1, look at how can we bring flash deals, rewards, and make it enticing hook to grab people back into your app. Bukalapak here does it quite well in terms of the figures and the discounts that are shown. Explicitly show, you guys did it quite well in Vietnam, explicitly show discounts and saving, make it flashy, make it bold, but be mindful of a balance between how much you want to show and flash up versus how much is content, right? And also the point of showing live casts, like TikTok sales, now TikTok is picking up a lot of sales. It shows authenticity to customers that people can relate, say, oh, this person looks a bit like me, he's also using this or she's using this, I think I can use this too. It becomes a hook to entice people to buy. Let's look at point 5. This one is a particular interesting thing for me, is foster family values and build communities. If we look at this, ASEANs in general is a collective culture that like staying in communities, we respect our parents, we uphold the family name, almost like Mulan, right? And it's about family and community comes first before the individual. So from our culture, if we were to put on that cultural lenses, it translates back into the designs that we do. oftentimes, and do ask yourself, when you want to buy something and it's a little bit expensive item, do you immediately like open wallet, nah, take my money? Or you go into like, you ask your cousin, you ask your friends, you ask your relatives, you check out online reviews before you even make a decision. If you do that, you are a true blue Asian. So around the area of allow group discussions about a product, let the user discuss. Essentially, this discussion helps to boost the organic sale. Bukalapak does it quite well. There's an interaction with even the interaction with the seller. Penjual here is the seller. Oftentimes when we make decision, it's not about one person, it's about a collective decision. Ask yourself when you go to a restaurant, how many times you open Google app and see what's the star rating before you even step into a restaurant. Sometimes you'll be like, this is 3.2, don't want lah, yeah, not nice. Why not nice? You haven't even tried it yet, but you yourself say it's not nice because it's heavily influenced by reviews, by ratings. So show reviews and ratings, make sure that it is obvious because people want to be sure of their decision before parting ways with their money. Point 3 here, engage users through textual conversation. So ensure the user and make sure that their concerns are addressed. So like what Bukalapak did is like allow when the seller is responding, it really shows who's the seller. But this, on the other end on Shopee, is a one-on-one conversation with the seller. Look at point 6. So point 6 is a counter opposite of point 5. Point 5 talks about being like, gung-ho about family first, community first, collectivism. But point 6 here, as you are building up and caring about the community, there's a chance in terms of like, I want to be individually expressive. I want to be outside of, my family like red, but I like blue. I want to be the blue. But in order to be blue, but I don't want to contradict with the red. That kind of feeling. So build delights through forms of personalization, allow areas where people can do individual expression. What this means, a bit of picture of me on the side. So with all the physical conformity to the communal culture, many individuals seek a place to escape, to express their individualization. One example on a physical world that you can see, phone covers or whatever that's hanging out from your phones. Those are physical expression. Allow people to sort of like build on top of something that you already have, right? Let's look at this. So some things that you can do, and these are just delight moments. They're not essentially your UI. It could be things that sort of like add value in because people feel they can resonate with. Personalization here, if you take a look at the note, personalization here, it basically just provide delights. Any form of improvement, etc., they're just added bonus. It doesn't affect any part of your offering. But the value that it builds here is there's a form that people can feel like you're not just a standard template, you're not just like e-commerce site, there's areas that I can feel expressive on. One example is like Shopee with Shogi, which is the sticker series that they have. 7, I particularly love point 7. And just I know all your cameras are off, but you can, try to answer yourself, like, in which society, East and West, that you see someone like 40-year-old and still thinks that Hello Kitty is cute? Asian, right? So use visual cuteness to attract. Why? Because visual cuteness is something like, so adorable, I love it. So let's dive in a little bit and see. So using visual cuteness, it's a form of attraction. Building on to that individual's expression is to look cute, it feel cute, act cute. So there are things that you can do to attract people back to your solution, such as creating mascots. This mascot here from Tokopedia is very characteristically used across the UI. And that said, right, if you want something to look cute, you don't want something to look like sharp edges and so on. Even the mascots that's designed, you have rounded corners, and that translates down into like even your UI. If you look at your UI, you should not have like sharp edges. You should not have like pointy stuff. It's all rounded, bubbly, feels soft. It feels inviting and welcoming. So sometimes this mascot that's in the digital world, it can be expressively brought up into the physical world. Very successful use would be like Shogi, the Shopee Thailand dog, the corgi dog that's across whenever they are launching events or doing promotions in person. Sometimes you see Shogi the dog that appear. We are coming to the eighth insight, and this eighth insight here is consider the possibility of everything in one. So what that essentially means is that as Asians, we are pretty comfortable in community. We are pretty comfortable being alone as well, but also pretty comfortable with being cluttered, being messy. But it almost feels like Asians are able to find order in this chaos. Look at the cities that we have from Indonesia, KL, Jakarta, Bangkok, very cluttered. Sometimes in spirit of architectural design, there's a term called order in chaos. And that kind of imprint in Asian, they say that, yes, we are acceptable with a lot of things. So your all-in-one, your super app idea, pretty much gets into this space. So see Japan, Korea, China counterparts where their apps are very cluttered. And it's almost like they're able to find their needle in a haystack. Clutterness, comfortability in that area. Take a look at this. So Asians love to see if you are creating things that are all-in-one or super app, put some thoughts into it. And those thoughts are around these 3 points. Within the fold of your phone, you know, like in the olden days when we're designing something, sometimes we call fold of the fold of a newspaper. So newspaper, when they put their highlights, when they put their big news, right, it has to be at the point that's above, because that's when people fold the newspaper and get the thing on their, that means that you're putting it in your armpit, walking around, folded, walking around. People can see the headline, people can see the news. So that's the fold. Same goes with your phone. Anything above the fold, before you swipe up or swipe down, that is your fold. You want to see everything at one glance. But because we want to see everything in one glance with an all-in-one or universal app idea, think of putting a grid layout in place. Because without the grid, everything will fall apart. Some invisible structure needs to be there. Remember the architecture example of order and chaos? That is essentially it. So best to use icons that are self-explaining, lesser words if it's possible, right? Because like people say, picture paints 1,000 words, and your icons should be able to self-explain, hopefully without the need of like reading your text. Text can be there assistively. So lastly is need to leverage a strong information flow so that you can entice user to scroll down. How is that made possible? Sometimes the UI is chopped in half, a little bit on the half. So people look at this and say, hey, okay, newspaper got chopped in half. I can open up the newspaper. Phone, UI chopped in half. I can scroll it up. So that's the enticement there. Yeah. Let's sum everything up in one. So one, think about the diverse language that we are planning for. Which language you're supporting? Aim for your first native language. 2, be mobile only. 3, picking that right OS. If resource is a problem, go with Android if you're launching in ASEAN. Then only follow through into your iOS. Don't go with iOS when more than half the population around Southeast Asia is on Android, right? Then show best bang for the buck, because short of me saying like we are cheapskate, there is a lot of value in terms of showing how much saving there is, how much discounts that you're getting. Think about that community spirit. Any decision points come from being in a community. So your ratings, your reviews, those need to be really upfront. And that's not just in e-commerce. In other places as well, is adaptable. This insights is adaptable into other industry. Built-in delights. Delights here for personalization is literally an added bonus on top of things that you can do. So make sure that the foundational stuff is robust before you even try to attempt any form of personalization. Then, if possible, use visual cuteness. Remember the thing about like which 40 or 50-year-old girl might say that, oh, Hello Kitty is cute, Doraemon is adorable. Visual cuteness. And lastly, if we do consider everything in one, create some form of structure, invisible structure behind it, allow people and entice people to scroll beyond your fold. And those principles will help you to create some form of order. Even though it looks chaotic, you can still find your needle in a haystack. With that, thank you so much for listening to me. If interested to stay connected, my LinkedIn QR code is on the screen. Sanchita, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Victor. So I have one question, I think two questions. It was indeed very insightful, very well done presentation also, very, very interesting.
I drew all of them.
Oh my God, wow, so nice, yeah. Okay, yeah, well, you are a designer, so, so that's expected. Okay, so let me see the questions. So there's two questions which you can see. One is about sometimes engaging automated chat process irritates the probable buyers. So how to minimize that? I think one of them, what Lazada is doing, is Lazy Chat, which is AI enabled. Anything else, Victor, which you have?
Yeah, I can chime in here. It's not just on like Lazada or e-commerce. It happens in a lot of places. And sometimes we call this as a triage chatbot. And oftentimes it's a very simple fix in design. Upfront, show and tell your users that this is actually a chatbot helper. But by the time it transitions over into an actual human, highlight up in your UI to say that now there's an actual human that takes over. This is done quite well by let me see what's that app called again, crypto.com. If you go to crypto.com and raise a ticket, a chatbot starts the conversation. But the moment the chatbot can't triangulate and triage, it will move it out to an actual person and you know when the actual person comes in. So it's done pretty well. If you want to experience it, go download crypto.com, raise a ticket and experience that chatbot. Hope that helps.
Thanks, Victor. We have two questions from Tim. As you can read, it's basically, he's an Indonesian, and he mentions that it's great to see a bunch of Indonesian apps featured over Bukalapak and Tokopedia. Of all the different cultural nuances mentioned, do you think there are any that are uniquely Indonesian?
I wouldn't say that that's uniquely Indonesian, but in terms of uniquely outside of Singapore, yes. So in terms of price point, I think price sensitivity, that is critical, one of the most critical point. Allow this discussion, conversation to happen. That is very critical as well, because imagine you are staying in a very rural place, you want to buy something, but then you don't have access to people that know how about it. So that form of conversation that you have, even with the seller or a direct one-to-one seller or a forum chat, helps me, if I'm the one staying in the rural place, to make a decision on like whether should I buy this based on the information that I gathered. So I wouldn't say that it's uniquely Indonesian, but it's uniquely outside of Singapore.
So Tim, hopefully that answers your question. There's another question from Tim that he also, obviously we noticed that collectivism was mentioned. And do you utilize any cultural frameworks like Hofstede or Hall's cultural dimensions in order to better validate these types of specific cultural observations in design?
I would say no. Yes, if you remember the upfront, do you guys hear the beeping sound?
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit.
the beeping.
Not from me though, it's very sharp. Oh, so just to chime in here is that I don't use them. It's more of observations that I observe from different clients that we work with, and it tends to build. So as you are in the design industry for a long period of time, you tend to like collect all of these insights and observations that you use. So I would say, unfortunately, no, I don't use it in this context.
Okay. Tim, are you by any chance from Lazada? Just a question. Okay. We have a model internally. That's what I was thinking. So, which ties the cultural aspect with the UX design. So yeah. Okay. El Domingo mentions that very insightful, especially your insights about our users' love for organized chaos. Almost same as the question above. Would you recommend a certain framework more applicable for the Asian point of view?
I think there's no sort of hard and fixed framework that you use here. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of times based on the client work or projects that have been done. You've been building up a certain repository, right? And this repository, you tend to like start to put some kind of like framing on it. So to me, this deck that I've created is still a work in progress. The more clients that I work with, the more projects that I've seen, I tend to like build on top of it. So I would say if you are in design for long, start collecting whatever insights that you've observed and start to apply them and evolve them as you grow in your career.
Okay, thanks, Victor. Let's see, what else do we have? Let me put up the chat a little bit. Okay, so there's, I think, some comments. So Tim also mentions that he definitely agrees with the discussion part. Reviews are a very important part. And then Jane mentions that comments and recommend that basically the rated starts are very important. Rated, I think the star ratings are very important to decide shopping in Korea also. How about in Western countries?
Interestingly, right, for this, and just to fall back a little bit on my area's expertise is right now I'm the head of design for Asia Pacific. So mostly all these insights and nuances are very Asian centric. But if you were to look at this deck and you want to bring this deck over to the Western side, right, a lot of these insights will flop. The biggest one will flop will be the all-in-one. So the point number 8, you're trying to put everything together. People will like frighten, like, wow, how to find things. That would be a big challenge. And then the second one that will break is in terms of using cuteness. But with Korean culture that's like sipping over K-pop, etc., people are a little bit more receptive now. But if you were to take this like a few years back, cuteness will not play well. Imagine Apple trying to look cute. What will happen?
Yeah. So one more question, I think, from Koon. Thanks, Victor, and for sharing the insights. How about carousel in Singapore and in other markets? They have a huge market in the Southeast Asia region. Seems like it is the site doesn't change much if you change between Indonesia, Hong Kong, etc.
I've not really seen carousel much. It all depends on the decision of management of the firm, right, or the company, right. If they just want to maintain one website, by all means, it's their decision. But doing this, like for example, with Grab, IP sensitivity, or even like Tokopedia, it requires a huge product team, let alone a design team. Like I'm sure like Grab has like 100 plus designers. Toko has like 60, 70 the last time I talked to them. But it depends on the resources. It's not say that you can't do it, you can, but the issue is more about money in terms of will carousel invest into it.
yes, localization definitely requires a huge investment. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
just to react, right, Sanchita, just to react to there's one comment on like cuteness is important
yes.
in Korea. And I want to bring this reference to like if you were to see the Olympics, right? If you were to have it in US, you have the bald eagle, just one bald eagle as the mascot. But Asian are suckers for everything that's cute. Look at China launching a Olympic. How many mascots we have? 5. And all of 5 got different colors. So it's in terms of like how do you play your that cuteness element. In Asian context, it flies. But please be mindful of like balancing between too cute and usability of your app, right?
I think all the questions have been answered. And any other questions from anyone else? I don't see anything here. Let's just quickly check the live streaming as well if there's any questions there. But if you have any questions, please send it here. Okay, I think no more questions from anyone. Oh, okay, there is a question, is it? At the end? No.
I think there's one Arun mentioned about like nuances in Thailand as a market. I won't be able to answer you right now. Truth be told, currently I'm on a new client work with Thailand. Maybe I can answer you after I complete this Thai work. So Arun, maybe you can sync up with me on LinkedIn, and then let's keep the conversation going, and I can maybe can feed you more info after my case in Thailand.
Okay, there's one more, I think, at the end, which says, thank you for the presentation. Well presented, insightful, and concise. But the question is, the apps we see are quite identical. How should each brand differentiate from one another? Do you foresee any upcoming new trends in the near future?
Yeah, it depends on industry though. Like right now, and I would sort of tie into the work that we are doing in consulting, is that like you mentioned, a lot of like Jaslyn mentioned, right? A lot of brands are starting to converge and looking like one another. So there are tasks of clients that coming to us to ask in terms of like what can we differentiate outside. And oftentimes we look at value propositions of the app or the company and redesign it based on their value proposition. So if you're seeing the entire e-commerce world right now, it feels like a convergence stage, everyone looking like one another. But there are some players right now that are engaging with like management consulting to like, hey, can you help us to think about that leap away from my competitors? And that work is around what we call CVP, or customer value proposition design.
Okay, thanks a lot, Victor. Hopefully you had all your questions answered. Any of you, if you have any more questions, otherwise we will give back about 15 minutes of your time and we'll end the session. And yeah, thanks a lot, Victor. Thanks everyone
Thank you so
else
much
for joining. Thank you.
Thanks everyone, have a good day.
You too.